Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Fan Project Content Creator Series brought to you by Sports Innovation Lab. Once again, I'm your host, Jack Barlow. And as Content Supervisor here at Sports Innovation Lab, I've had the luxury of speaking with each of our recipients of our Fan Project Title IX grant over the past few weeks. If you haven't heard already, the grant is focused on promoting up-and-coming content creators that are producing innovative storytelling content around women's sports. At Sports Innovation Lab, we've been focusing on how data can unlock the business potential of women's sports. And earlier this year, we launched the Fan Project to prove to the industry about the untapped market of women's sports and how the industry has left billions of dollars on the table. Now, today's our third edition of the series, and we're going to feature two women who are using their platform to create a safe community for sports fans to communicate freely and learn about the athletes and sports they love. Now, today I'm joined by Rickay Gibson and Angela Spears of Black Girls Talk Sports to unpack their platform, their community of fans, their outlooks on the sports media industry, and their plans for creating a more inclusive media landscape in the future. Now, their show is approaching their 5-year anniversary next month, so it's a great time to chat with the both of them, and you'll hear how they've been growing Black Girls Talk Sports from the ground up since day one. So I'm pleased to welcome Rickay Gibson and Angela Spears of Black Girls Talk Sports to today's edition of the Fan Project Content Creators Series. Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Angela Spears and Rickay Gibson of Black Girls Talk Sports. We're going to be talking women's sports specifically today, content creation, and all things around the wonderful world of the sports industry. So Angela, Rickay, thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, obviously you guys are both here for the content creator grant that Sports Innovation Lab gave out. We selected 4 amazing groups that are highlighting the women's sports world and creating their own content through multiple platforms. So would like to get started with an easy one. Angela, I don't know if you want to kick us off, but what made you want to get into content creation, and why did you decide to focus on women's sports?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Rekaya because she had the vision for Black Girls Talk Sports, and then I'll fill in if
Perfect.
that's okay.
No problem at all. Rekaya, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So, of course, as a young person, I always thought about being this sportscaster. And as a young woman, of course, I saw all men doing it, but I love sports. I loved all sports. And, it was one of many dreams as a kid because I changed a lot of my goals as we grow. But, as the world evolved and there was an opportunity to do podcasting, I thought, hey, that would be fun to really kind of have my own show to talk about sports. And I invited Angela on and we just gelled together. And I'm like, she's a huge sports fan, which I'll let her speak on that. But I was just like, here's an opportunity to be, per se, our own sportscasters, our own show, and give people content from our perspective. And I just love it because, of course, I would not be podcasting without my husband, who encouraged the podcast realm because I knew nothing about it. But it's such a great forum for us to be uninterrupted with other distractions. We can record our content and we can get it out into the world, everywhere, which is amazing, which people have listened in over 100 countries now.
Wow. And
even that's, a little bit better than some of the sports networks, right? So
most definitely,
never had the dream of doing it that way. But it's something that we do as a hobby and we love it.
Mm-hmm. Angela, follow up to that, probably a tough one to follow, but why don't you give it a shot?
Yes, I will. So it's funny because Rekaya had me on as a guest for several weeks. I'm like, sure, I love sports. I'm talking to one of my best friends. So that was, a given. It was just easy to say yes to that because it's 2 things that I love, again, sports and then chatting it up with my girlfriend, right? And I think in terms of putting the content out in the world, I agree with everything Rekaya said. And we can have our own narrative around sports because you don't often see women's perspectives encouraged.
Mhm.
And we have a perspective, and we have a whole group of people who have a very strong perspective around sports. And, I know a lot about sports. Rickay knows a lot about sports. We know plays, we know players. And again, I think it's surprising to some that we know so much. So it's amazing to have our own platform that we own. We control the content we put out there, and we educate individuals about the world of sports. We inspire through stories, documentaries, and really thinking about unsung sports heroes that you don't hear about every day because the media doesn't promote them. And also really putting an angle on more diversity in sports and hearing about, people that you never heard about in sports. Like I know we did a episode on Black jockeys in the Derby. They actually created the Derby, and you don't hear about that every day. So really being able to control our own content, put it out there, educate, inspire, and especially think about young people who are coming along. Maybe they can hear a guest on our podcast and say, hey, well, I can do that too. And so that's also important for us.
Yeah, excellent. No, you touched on a lot of great things there. We at Sports Innovation Lab often talk about how fluid fans want to learn. So the fact that you both are able to educate through your platform, and you're reaching such a global audience, 100+ countries, which is incredible. Rekaya, if you want to touch on how you were able to build this community from the ground up, like obviously you got it going, you had Angela on as a guest for a few times, and now you're both hosting it together. What's it been like? What have you seen as an effective tool to kind of grow this community and give that sense to your listeners?
Sure. So Angela's in the Northeast, far up, and I'm in Virginia. And so we're able to record. We record via Skype, we get it out there. And what we've learned is that, through social media, once you share it on social media, people are interested. Mm-hmm. And so what we did was we created a community on Facebook. It's a private Facebook group for women to continue the conversation, because sometimes women are shy and just listening is not enough for some people, or just leaving a review is not enough. And so we found that even though we have some, like as Angela says, some strong opinions about sports, there are women who are truly shy about it, who really want to have a conversation, who really want to have a conversation with their boyfriend and their husband around sports and not feel attacked, not they don't have to feel like I have to, have all the stats that you can talk about it comfortably. Some of the basic knowledge, some of the basic plays. And I think we started the Facebook group, I don't know, maybe 4 years. So we're going on our 5th year podcasting. And so I think we've had the Facebook group for 4 years. And we really just have like an extenuation of some of our episodes. The thing is, I can't keep up in the group because women want to talk about everything and all sports. And I'm like, okay, let's see. And usually they beat me to it, which is great. And I've seen the growth in a bunch of women who really feel comfortable in this space. And I even noticed, even on those other networks, I won't call the names, I see some of their comments on there, and I'm like, yes, say that, because we've really given them, the courage to just like be comfortable in their own skin and their own opinions around sports. And it continues to just grow. And the great thing about it, Angela and I have been doing this almost 5 years, and pretty much consistent every week, with a couple of weeks missing. And I think because of that, because we show up and we're consistent, I think people look for our content. I think they look for the engagement every day, because every day I literally have to engage with my group or they're going to think what's going on. And so I love that about this community that we've created.
Yeah, no, that's great. It sounds like that Facebook group is a perfect way to personalize it. When you host a podcast, I produce our CEOs, and sometimes you feel like you're talking to no one almost, and you have to get that sense of connection between you and the listeners. And the fact that you have that forum is fantastic. And Angela, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. How have you seen, obviously, I'm sure that the numbers within the group has grown, but, is there specific conversations within that Facebook group that you feel like are generating more often? And obviously you don't have to name names or any specific kind of topics or anything of that nature if you don't want to, but is there something you feel like, you kind of had a moment where you're like, man, this Facebook group's actually almost a second podcast. It's just now on a different forum.
Yeah, that's a great question. It just to pick up on what you said about the Facebook group being kind of an extension of the podcast. That's very much true. We get comments about certain episodes, some more than others in the Facebook group, but you'll hear people say, oh, this was great. I learned this, or this was something new to me, or I'm really passionate about this topic. And we even get feedback about, yeah, you got this right or you got this wrong. I mean, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine, because as Rekaya said, we want to create that safe space where people feel, women in particular, feel comfortable about sharing their voice around sports. I'd also say that just to pick up on what Rekaya said, you have women who are really running this group themselves. Like Rekaya posts all the time. She's a social media lover and I am not. So I am not as engaged in the group, but the women are completely engaged. I mean, there's news updates from group members daily. All day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And so sometimes it's like I get some of my updates from there. Sometimes I've already heard about it. And it's like, yep, heard that, seen that. But it's incredible to see just how it's organically grown. And I think it's also a space where, to Rekaya's point, women can learn if they don't feel comfortable, because you have sometimes men who aren't patient about explaining things. And so we know, and I'm telling you, these women, this group of women in our Facebook group, they know their stuff, they know their sports, they know the teams, they know the players, they even know the stats. Yep. And it's just incredible to see them show up and really engage on a consistent basis within the group.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have something to add, Rickay? It sounded like you wanted to jump in.
I was going to say, and I must confess, like, some of their topics really kind of guide what we talk about certain weeks, right? Because I'm like, there's some interest around this. There may be some meat and potatoes that we need to dig a little deeper, especially when we had like the social justice piece going on, which people are still, they're still on top of that in the group. Angela and I really had to reflect, give ourselves time to reflect and say, you know what, we need to talk about this as well. Not just for our group, but just for other people. And I like that about our Facebook group.
Yeah. And that's, perfectly leading into my next question. I was going to ask about, the passion and how, knowledgeable, but they're also very, outspoken and fans of women's sports. They follow societal issues, and they're very passionate about the teams and the leagues that are keeping up with what the society is feeling in the times. And obviously this past summer or so had a lot of happenings going on around the country, here in the US specifically. But where do you feel, fans of women's sports or maybe members of your Facebook group are separating themselves in the sense of a traditional fan, where, they might follow a WNBA team because they feel like they're more passionate about a societal issue than someone else, or, you equal pay has been big, and a lot of different things in the women's soccer world. So how do you feel that, fans of women's sports or your listeners are able to kind of communicate that in a different way?
I can share something. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So I remember we actually had one particular member who chose to stop watching the NFL when social justice became an issue several years ago, probably went in our first year, maybe second year of having the group. And I remember she would say, I'm banning the NFL. And that was one of the platforms that she shared her stance. But she's like, but I get some of my updates through the group. And that's totally respected there. And so, that's one example. I think women, again, to Rekaya's point, feel that this is a safe space because it's a private group. One of the things Rekaya didn't say is we have many men who want to get in on a group, and they're not, it's for women only. And it's not to discriminate, but it's to have that safe space where women can share their perspective without feeling uncomfortable or unconfident or worrying about what someone of the opposite sex is going to say. So that's one stance. I think also, cheering certain things on. Like you have Deion Sanders, who is coaching at Jackson State University, and them cheering him on, saying, wow, this is amazing. He's an icon, obviously one of the best of all time in the NFL, but what word do I want to use? I don't want to say trend, but he's setting a path that's different and new than what we've seen. And so we say, yay, I'm cheering him on, and look at these statistics and look at what's happening and look at what people are saying about this. So I say that people feel safe, women feel safe in the environment, and they take on stances that are maybe not common. Again, to Rekaya's point, we also bring some of those topics to the podcast, and we're not shy about sharing our perspective and our opinion. So that's my perspective on your question, and hopefully that answered your question, but let me know if it didn't.
Yeah, no, it did. And it's not very much not an easy question to answer, but I mean, you put up the Deion Sanders point. I think it's really good because, you had Deion Sanders at Jackson State, and then Eddie George, I believe, is Tennessee State. So,
Yes.
Two NFL legends coming together now. No prior major coaching experience, but they're carving their own path. They're setting up a plane for the future. And a big thing, we hear it all the time, and we've said it once or twice already on a few of these content creator pieces, but if you see it, you can be it. And so having that person of power in that kind of position is very important, and it's starting to lay the groundwork, and hopefully more things to come. But that is another great transition, in my opinion, because I would love to know what either of you would love to see as a change in the industry. You can go as small or large. We've talked about, obviously getting more women's sports coverage or more sponsorship dollars. That was our goal of the Fan Project, was to create the business case and use data and real fan data to unlock that. So, Rickay, if I'll jump back to you, do you have a change you would like to see in the sports industry?
I definitely would like more. We've seen it already, but I like more stories around athletes and mental health, and being able to tell their story, because I think that people are suffering and people need to know that their hero also experienced anxiety, also experienced depression. And I think there's some athletes who are leading the way around that conversation. And I'd like, for the industry specifically, I'd just like to see some of the major leagues really embrace the idea that we need to make sure that we take care of our athletes, but we also need to make sure that people see them as human as well. So they have an opportunity to tell a different story. We have an opportunity to tell a different story as fans. And I think as fans, we have a responsibility to support any athlete who may be suffering from depression or anxiety or what have you. And I love that we've started that conversation with Black Girls Talk Sports in and outside the group and on the podcast. And there's still more work that needs to be done, but I think we're up for the challenge.
Yeah. It's, you see these athletes all the time, national television and stadiums of 60,000, 100,000 people. And, it's easy to put them on a pedestal and just think, oh, they play a game. So, that's really all there is to it. But obviously there's the life outside the sport and everything else that's going on in the mental health capacity, with Naomi Osaka too, pretty recently. I mean, #1 tennis player in the world. And sometimes it's not the easiest thing to do to go play tennis, and then so she has a lot of issues that she's been very vocal about, which is great to have someone of her stature able to speak on that. Angela, do you want to jump in as well? It doesn't have to be on the mental health piece. You can touch on that as well. And then if you have another change in the industry you'd like to see.
Sure. And I would say even more broad is just focus on issues that affect women, such as, women who have babies and our athletes, like we talked about Allison Felix and how what she dealt with Nike in her particular situation. Another thing I like to see as a change in the industry is more women as referees, as officiants and such. We've talked about that for years, and we have seen some progress in the last year or 2 years. And it's good to see that progress since we have talked about it since the beginning. But of course, more of that, because women are a force to be reckoned with, let me tell you. And it's in sports and whatever. And I think women should be given more opportunities with that. And I think, of course, women's issues should be addressed as well. Another thing that we have talked about on the podcast is more equitable pay for women in sports. And that's obviously something that many others are advocating for. You hear about it, but we want to see just more progress in that. And also just in general, more diversity and inclusion in the sports industry. We've had several guests who have talked about that, whether they have positions at different sports organizations or advocates for that in their own way. And we've heard some interesting stories around that, but we just want to continue to see progress on all fronts: diversity, women, ethnic, backgrounds, all of the above. I think there's the opportunity, when you think about sports, the sports industry as a whole, it's, been dominated by certain gender, by certain races, but, there's so much brilliance and diversity. And I think we can expect to be more entertained and more excitement the more we embrace diversity and inclusion in the sports industry, including sports podcasters. Maybe we like to see a women's show, an all women's show related to sports, right? Wink, wink. No, I'm just kidding.
Yep. No, it's a very good plug. We'll get your social channels and where to find the podcast here shortly. But no, I think the point you made about, women officiating as well, female officials, is we've seen some of the major leagues like the NFL and the NBA are certainly kind of leading the way in that regard. And actually just earlier this week, we're recording this in about mid-October, the AHL, the American Hockey League, announced that for the first time they're going to have 10 female officials. And so, there'll be some history being made in mid-October here, a little time traveling, if you will. But so it's good to see that even all around, and it doesn't have to be the professional level, it could be the semi-professional, that we're seeing some changes in history continuing to be made. But yes, definitely think, the diversity inclusion part is great. Obviously, Black Girls Talk Sports, there's right built into the name there. You're both coming at it from that side of things. But as I get to wrap up here, just want to ask both of you a quick question about what's next. So obviously we've worked to get you the grant money, and we want to see you continue to grow your platforms, continue to succeed, continue to deliver amazing sports content, and help foster that sense of community for your listeners, that openness in the Facebook group for all those women, which is fantastic. So Rekaya, you started this 5 years ago. What's the next 5 years look like?
Oh my gosh, you sound like Angela now. Asking me this question. I'm probably sweating over here. So of course we will continue to podcast, and which is available everywhere. And we will continue to engage our group. I hope to max out our group and so that it can be manageable. But also we'd like to look at other sports that we haven't touched upon. That's another cool thing. And then to tell more stories. We really would like to do more profiles on women. We've added some recently, and our group tends to like that because they get to, like Angela said, learn about athletes they never even heard of. So that's kind of nice. And so you'll see more of that as well, because and actually that's a good story, because one of the athletes, I can't remember her name right offhand, but her sister heard the podcast about her sister, and she's like, oh my God, this is great that you're talking about my sister, and that I really felt great about that, because like no one was talking about her to this day. And if I remember, I will share her name, but it was a gymnast. And so I'm just like, this is great. And we're going to continue to tell those stories. And pretty soon, all the stories about women, all the stories about men and sports will come from Black Girls Talk Sports.
Yeah, excellent. We often say, you know, a big piece of the community-based monetization model that we've been trying to educate the market on is all about storytelling, and you need to produce content in a different way rather than just the typical, oh, the score was 21-20,
Right.
they had 3 touchdowns, and you know, they won on a last second field goal or something like that. It's more around, you know, maybe that kicker's heart rate was elevated to a certain degree when he was trying to make that final kick, or you know, one of the women, like you're saying, Allison Felix, the story with her and Nike, and then you know, doing that deal with Athleta, and you know, giving a bunch of money to the female athletes or female Olympians that were dealing with childcare and everything. So that's an amazing story that the industry really needs to continue to build on, and glad to hear that your show has been augmenting those the voices of the voiceless, if you will. But
Yes.
yeah,
And actually, as they say, evergreen content, that's really our best growing content is the evergreen content. So
yeah, no, that's excellent. Angela, do you have a goal you would like to accomplish with the show, or is there a next
Yeah.
platform you want to touch on, or what's coming next?
Sure. So another thing we've talked about is just really having solid categories of content. So you'll hear more broad range of content and more content aligned to those different buckets, just being more intentional about the content we're putting out there. And also just, exploring opportunities to potentially collaborate with others who have sports platforms. We're exploring that just to see what that might look like for us. So, if you hear this interview and are interested, reach out to us, because we're just trying to see what the possibilities might be. One thing too, when you mentioned Black Girls Talk Sports, I just want to clarify the meaning of Black Girls Talk Sports. And it's not to be exclusive at all. Rickay and I are obviously African-American girls, we're Black girls, and we just so happen to talk sports. So that's what the name, what's the meaning behind the name.
Sure.
So I just want to clarify that it's open to any and all, including men, to listen to. The Facebook group just happens not to be. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. But yeah, that's what I see for the future. And just again, as Rickay said, more content, more stories, because again, storytelling resonates. You think about ESPN Plus and the documentaries that are on there. I love watching those Netflix documentaries. That interests me. And so we want to do more of that storytelling, and maybe even inviting more guests to tell their stories, because we haven't had a ton of guests over the past 5 years, but maybe that's something we'll dive into as it aligns with our categories of content, as I mentioned before.
Right. Yeah, no, that's
to grow our audience, of course.
I mean, tough to beat 100 countries already, but yeah, it's always the goal to continue to get that wide net and get more people listening to the show, and hopefully have them driving those similar conversations that you both are taking to the airwaves. But where, Rickay, I know you're the social media expert here. Where can people find the show? Do you have handles that we should be promoting now?
Yeah, well, I really like for people to go to our website first to just kind of explore, look around. It's blackgirlstalksports.com. And then we're on Facebook at Black Girls Talk Sports. Mm-hmm. And we're on Instagram, which we hope to do a few more Instagram stories and get people engaged on that platform a little bit more as we look towards the future. And on there, we're Black Girls Talk Sports Podcast on Instagram.
Excellent. Excellent. Well,
can I add one more thing about what I'd like to see for the future? It would be great to have our show, a show that comes out of this. I know that it's something that Rickay and I have just lightly talked about. It's not, like she mentioned, it's a hobby. We do it for fun, but that would be an amazing next step. So yeah, just putting that out there.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're trying to help you out the best we can with the grant money. I know it's not studio money, but hopefully it'll help you get moving in the right direction on that front. And then obviously we'll have this, and everyone's now got a chance to learn more about you and your program, and we'll be directing them to the website, the Facebook, the Instagram. We'll maybe have to jump in on an Instagram live together sometime soon and get our community mixing with yours, but
Yes.
appreciate you both taking the time today. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the listeners here, the viewers?
Well, first of all, just thank you for, supporting us, a huge supporter and cheerleader. For Black Girls Talk Sports, we always leave with keep it sporty.
Mhm.
So definitely want to leave you with that. Keep it sporty, people. Stay engaged, look out for us, basically, and tell a friend.
Excellent.
Yeah. I was just going to say thank you to the Sports Innovation Lab for the grant. We're very appreciative, and the money will definitely go to good use to support our growth. And for those who have been listening to us, thank you so much for listening, as we always say, and just tell a friend about who we are and what we do. And again, thank you to all who have supported us over the years.
Excellent. Well, Angela Spears, Rickay Gibson of Black Girls Talk Sports, thank you so much. We'll keep it sporty.
Good. Thank you so much.
Right. Okay, once again, I want to say a big thanks to Rekaya Gibson and Angela Spears of Black Girls Talk Sports for joining me on the show today. They're doing amazing work to improve the sports media industry for fans, and I just want to say congratulations on their upcoming 5-year anniversary. No small feat to make it 5 years running, and we're excited to see what the next 5 years have in store for them. You've heard how amazing their Facebook community is, and it's just offering fans a safer place to voice their opinions, talk about difficult issues, and learn about the sports that they're consuming. So amazing platform. It's been working wonders for them, and clearly they're developing a very loyal community within it. So we're excited to be partnering with them throughout the extent of our grant, and we'll be following as they continue to grow their platforms and offer unique experiences for sports fans. I'd like to thank you, the viewer, the listener, for tuning in today. Tune in next week on Wednesday, not Thursday, as the U.S. is going to be celebrating Thanksgiving on Thursday. So we're going to be dropping our final episode of the Fan Project Content Creators Series a day early on Wednesday, and that will be with Radha Gupta, the host of She Talks Ball. So thank you again for tuning in today. Jack Barlow here for Sports Innovation Lab. We'll see you next week.